GDG, Google Developer Group San Diego for June 17th. And we have our presenter at this point. Carl, please go ahead.
Hey everyone, happy to be here at the GDG San Diego event for IO Extended. Tonight's topic is AI-based analytics in the cloud. And I think this topic is going to apply whether, I know there's some, Android developers in the group, web dev, everybody's dealing with data. And so you're going to see a variety of different data and AI related technologies from Google Cloud this evening. As Kyle mentioned, feel free if you have any questions to dive right in. We'll keep it interactive. We'll do a couple slides, some demos, and back and forth as we go. So let's go ahead and get started here. All right, here's the deck. So let's just start with a little bit of background on the topic. So data science has continued to be a very difficult role to fill in organizations. Even though it's been a hot area, it's still difficult to find skills in this area. And many companies are not using AI as much as they'd like to because of that lack of technical expertise. So what we're going to talk about tonight are ways that more folks can enter the fold and begin to expand their skill set into data science and AI. So let's start with something that's very, very common, which are spreadsheets. And you see this tweet where G Suite, or now Google Workspace, has 2 billion users. Many of those are using sheets from that, or spreadsheet application. So there's just so much data that's in spreadsheets, and let's take a look at how we can better utilize them. So often data comes into spreadsheets from a variety of different places. You see running reports, queries, APIs, you dump the information into a spreadsheet like you see here. What are some of the and it gets stale. Number 2, the size of the data. There's often limitations. Anything else that might be a problem with this approach? Well, security is an issue. If you have authorized certain users to the data, and you've extracted it to a spreadsheet, what prevents folks from emailing it around, putting it on a shared drive? You lose that authorization to the original source data. So a great solution to that is something called connected sheets. And it's this idea of connecting sheets, which is the SaaS-based Google spreadsheet solution, with BigQuery, which is our data warehouse that has tons of data that you can put in and run very quick queries on, and connecting the two together. So if you haven't heard of BigQuery, it's our data warehouse solution. Allows you to write standard SQL. It's totally serverless, built on top of some Google technology that's been there for years to enable high amounts of storage and extremely fast querying, and that you see here. And SDKs and all kinds of different languages, and I'll show you the UI in just a second. So BigQuery ML, or BigQuery machine learning, is on top of BigQuery, and it allows you to write SQL-like statements to build machine learning models. So in a few lines of SQL, you're building some potentially very accurate models directly from BigQuery. And the types of models really cover the gamut, everything from classification to regression, clustering, using TensorFlow models, AutoML. You can all do this with BigQuery ML. So let's take a quick look at the demo here. So let's start with looking at a data set that we're going to use. This is the Iowa Liquor Retail Set data set. It's available in BigQuery. There's a lot of these public data sets we made available, whether it's weather or economic data or all kinds of things. Lots of things you can explore in this public data sets. This is a good one for machine learning because it has 10 years of retail data. Basically, the state of Iowa required every liquor store to record those transactions, their wholesale transactions. And so it's a nice database allows you to look at trends of purchases over time. So you can go ahead and look at that data set here in BigQuery. You see the just some information, description, etc. Let's go ahead and actually go to the table. So here we are in BigQuery. We can see the schema. So these are the various fields available to us. More information like number of rows, 21 million rows. So this is what we're going to connect directly to our spreadsheet. And let's see a preview of the data. So you see these are individual transactions, for specific stores, geolocation information, the type of liquor, and things like the amount sold, right? So what we're going to talk about tonight is a forecasting. So we're going to apply a little bit of aggregation to the data. We're going to sum up all the transactions for each day, and then we're going to try to look at some trends over time. We're going to see, how does that vary? Are we seeing an upward trend? Are we seeing seasonality where certain brands are more popular during certain times of year? We're going to dive in and analyze that data. And so if you have data like this, how would you run some queries on it? Well, again, standard SQL syntax here. I can click query table, select star from it, and pull back some rows. You see there, went through 5.6 gigabytes in half a second here. So you can do all kinds of queries here directly in the UI. Okay, so that's BigQuery. So now let's take a look at connected sheets. Okay, so here we are in Sheets, and I want to show you how to connect to the database. I've already done this, but I'll show you how it might be done. If you're doing it from scratch, you'd go to Data, Data Connectors, and then connect to BigQuery. And this is where you would navigate inside of your project, connect to that database. And here we have 21 million rows here. So I can refresh, and I'll get another view of the data here in Sheets. I can, go through all these different rows here, no problem. Well, let's show a few capabilities that you can do here. Let's start with an extract. So here on this sheet, I've already kind of, pre-gamed this a little bit just to make this quicker. So I ran an extract where I chose a few columns, to keep it simple, just kind of what kind of information's here in this data. Date, item, store, etc. And that's what you see here. So I just selected it, selected a row limit, and then got an extract and put it here. Okay, pretty straightforward. Charting, same thing. Now, what's really cool about this is these are dynamic, right? So you're not working with stale data. You can literally click refresh. It's going to run the query. So if you can imagine, this database is, restocked with information every week. This is just a constantly updated chart. And finally, pivot tables. This is something that data analysts use quite a bit to query, sum the data. So what I did here is answer a question. The question was, what are the top 10 varieties of liquor sold? So how did I do that? I created my item here, sum of sale dollars in descending order. Oops. Where did that went off to the side here. Yeah, so I basically selected those things and I ran that query, and that's what you see here where I have my top 10 items. Okay, so that's it. That's connected sheets. That allows you to work with massive amounts of data from your sheet. Okay, so that's that piece of the demo. Let's keep moving here. Any questions so far from folks? Don't be shy. Okay, so let's
Is connected sheets part of which tier of the business offerings of workspaces?
We'll have to find that out. Maybe Kyle in the background, if you wouldn't mind just seeing if you, which tier that's available in.
Yep.
Yeah, great question. All right, so let's move on to a case study. This is applying what we've learned to a real world business scenario, demand forecasting. So demand forecasting is forecasting demand for some kind of item. So here's some examples of this. Transportation, maybe you're trying to figure out sales of tickets. It can be airlines, train, whatever. Media and gaming, trying to figure out how many people are going to be playing a game at a certain time, or content where we're looking at what streaming shows might be most popular, or telecom, where we're looking at network traffic, all kinds of different things. Anytime you're trying to predict kind of a time series and looking at what's going to happen next in the future, you're looking at demand forecasting. And a more popular example is retail, right? So how many items should I stock in my store? And this has real business impact. By using techniques like machine learning, you can improve your bottom line. So that what you're trying to balance here is you can make mistakes on one side where you over allocate and you have more supply than you need. And then on the other hand, you can have stockouts where you don't order enough and you have people wanting to buy things and you've ran out of stock. So getting everything matched up, and it is a very difficult thing that retailers struggle with. Things like trying to predict some new product, some new toy that's coming out for Christmas, or some line of clothing. How's it going to perform this year when fashion trends are changing? You can build machine learning models that take all kinds of factors to try to help answer these questions the best we can with data. So let's look more at this liquor sales data and try to apply what we've learned in BigQuery ML to solve some problems. So again, here's our transactional data, line by line, individual purchases by each store. Okay, so how would we train a machine learning model? Let's look at the syntax here. So do folks on the call know a little bit of SQL? A little bit. In any case, yeah, basically what we're looking at here at the top is a select statement. So what are the columns that we want from the data? Which table then in the from piece of the statement? Then we're going to group by the date and the item name. So that's what you see here. We're seeing by day, you see that first column there, and then by item. And then we are doing a filter here on the data to say about 1.5 years of data. We're going to only look at that window. So that's our training data. So in machine learning, what that means is your training data is what you're using to learn patterns from. Okay, and this is what that data looks like. So we've taken two types of liquor here. It's only 1.5 years, so you're not seeing sort of those year-by-year seasonality trends that much, although you can kind of see, say for the Black Velvet, look around February. It looks like it peaks for both 2016 and 2017. If you had more years, we'd be able to see more of that in more detail. So how do you actually build a model? So we talked about selecting the data we're going to use for the model. Now let's actually build a machine learning model. So first part of our statement here is creating the model. We're naming it, which schema does it belong to in the name, forecast by product. Then we pass in some options. And these are, there's a few of them, but they're actually fairly straightforward. The model type ARIMA. ARIMA is a popular statistical method for time series forecasting. That's just one of the ways to do it. You could, if we're looking at other problems, we'd pick like deep neural net or logistic regression. These are common approaches in machine learning. So this is simply the type of problem. Since it's time series, you always pick ARIMA. The next are the key options. What is the timestamp column? So what's our date column? And then what data are we actually trying to predict? That's total amount sold. And then finally, ID column. And an ID column is for this because you can have multiple time series in parallel of something you're trying to predict. In this case, it might be multiple types of liquor. They're different IDs. Another type of way you could structure this is maybe by store or by county, or all kinds of different ways to do it, where there might be a relationship between these different series. You could break them out and track them individually because they might have different behavior. Finally, you can also specify holiday region. This can be an important variable, right? Because in the case of the wholesale liquor purchases here, the wholesaler is closed on holidays, so you're going to see 0 purchases on those days. That's useful information for the model to know. So then what we do, so we're saying to build a model with these options, and then we're selecting from the training data, and that's it. You see on the left side some of the key functionality from from BigQuery that's out of the box. So pre-processing the data, holiday effects that we talked about, figuring out seasonality, and that's not necessarily easy. There can be multiple layers of seasonality. So think about this. There could be yearly trends that we talked about before. There could be weekly trends. So things like, Mondays are hot after the weekend and, Fridays are not, or something like that. Even hourly trends, certain times of the day. So a lot of this is in here, outlier detection, et cetera. And finally, one very cool thing, if you're into time series, is something called auto ARIMA, where it's finding the parameters of this model automatically. It's trying all these combinations, finding the one that gives you the best results. Okay, so how do you use the model? We talked about how to build it. Now let's look at how to use it. So there's a syntax here we're seeing, ml.forecast, and you pass in the model name and some parameters. So here we're passing in the time horizon. We're going to forecast 30 days forward, and we're going to give a confidence level. So, with any forecast, it's never perfect. What we can do here is say, give me an upper and lower bounds with 90% confidence along with the main prediction. So if you're interested in this use case, we've got more information on the Google Cloud blog and a YouTube video that describes this as well. We don't need to watch the video. Okay, so let's talk about doing this yourself. Okay, so we learned about the technology. We saw a general use case. Now let's see if we want to solve our own problem. So let's say these are the business requirements and you're assigned to this project. So you are looking at building out a custom machine learning model. You want to enable your business users throughout your organization to within their spreadsheets, be able to run models like this to do forecasting out of financial or order data or whatever they have. So if you look at some of the technologies that we're going to work with here, it's Sheets, which we talked about, BigQuery, BigQuery ML, connected Sheets, and something new called AppScript, which we'll talk about now, which is the glue between all of this stuff. So AppScript is just JavaScript that's going to run in the Google Workspace products, and it has SDKs to use BigQuery functionality or Workspace or all kinds of other stuff it can do. And it's pretty powerful. It's with a couple lines of code, you can do things like you see here. You're in a spreadsheet and you want to say, let me get the name of the active sheet, or let me get the cells that are selected by the user and grab that information out of it. So that's what we're going to work with here in this example, is this app script. So we're going to pull data out of a spreadsheet and run a machine learning model out of it. So as a data analyst or somebody working with data, here's the flow you could take. You would take Sheets, AppScript, and BigQuery ML, combine those all together. All right, so let's see a demo. Okay, so this sheet, and I'm going to provide you a link at the end, has all the information to do this yourself. So let's start with looking at the example data. So this is a different use case. This is actually from the Google store, where basically some anonymized data here. We took visits to the store over time at an hourly rate. So you're seeing, instead of daily, as we saw before, hourly data and the number of web visits. So what we're going to do is predict, how many visits are we going to have tomorrow or the next week or something like that. Okay, so how are we going to do this? So we are going to use something called, AppScript. We're going to go into our script editor here, and I'll show you some of the code here behind the scenes, how this works. Okay, so without going into a ton of detail on the code, let's just show a few key things. Number one, how do you create a user interface within your sheet? Here I have a function called onOpen, and this creates a menu item called BQML, BigQuery ML, and I've got a couple different menu items there. And then each of those menu items, what it does is it links it to a JavaScript function. So if you click on the training function here on the menu, it's going to run the train function. And then I've defined it. and I don't want to get into all the details, but what's happening behind the scenes here is this is a general purpose queries. Like I'm basically constructing these on the fly, like you saw, like forecasting here. Let's see an example. That syntax of creating the model. What I'm doing is I'm creating a new model based on the data in the spreadsheet. I'm putting the options in it. I'm actually going out to the cloud. So here's how it's going to work. I'm going to select data. I'm going to copy it into a temporary table in BigQuery. Then I'm going to create a model and run it on that data, and then return that data back to the user. So kind of a full training loop. All of this sample code here is in GitHub. I'll give you a link at the end of the presentation. The JavaScript code that you would add to Sheets to be able to run this. So let's actually see it in action. So I'm going to take all this data, and what I would do here, I'll go to that BQML menu. Remember, I wrote that code to add the menu. I'm not going to train right now. It'll take like 3 to 5 minutes, not a long time, but just to save us time. I just did that before we started. What I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to forecast forward. So I'm going to select how many hours forward do we want to forecast? Somebody throw out a number.
Go ahead, Ritik. What's your number?
Let's say 10.
10. Oh, okay, good number. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. All right. Just to show this isn't a a fake demo here. This is, we're going to do BQML forecast. I'm going to run the script. And there you go. It filled in those additional days. And that's the example of like using Sheets to do things like look at how many rows did I have selected. I had 10 rows selected. And then when I ran that command to do forecast, it set the horizon parameter to 10 and pointed it to my model, and boom, here you go. And if you're just eyeballing it here, it does look like kind of a nice, like it fits in with the data, right? Where it's kind of coming up and then coming back down. But let's actually do a more real world, validation of this. So on this next spreadsheet, that's exactly what I did. Okay, so I took this data. What am I showing here? What did I do is I trained on all of the data that we have minus the last 3 days. So what I was trying to do is where the red starts, I only had seen up to this point. And then I was forecasting forward the next 3 days. And the red is what I predicted, and the blue was the actual. So that's, pretty close if you look at the trend lines here. Again, the model in red had never seen any of that previous data and forecast that forward. And I'm just showing here in this example the last week of data to give you some context around kind of the trends. So that's an example of what you could do with this. So that kind of wraps up the demo. Let's go back to the slides. If you want to find out more about some of the technologies you learned about today, I have a nice bit.ly link here, bit.ly ml-sheet, and that will go to the blog post around this. And the blog post at the bottom has links to the assets, the code sample, even this sheet. You can make a copy of it. It's made public, so you can try this out yourself. And that's it. Any questions?
Hey, Carl.
Yeah.
Yeah, so actually I had a question when you were presenting the slide about the making a forecast. So
Yes.
in that slide, you mentioned something about a confidence level. So could you tell me what exactly is confidence level?
Yeah, so when it's making a prediction, it's able to calculate a variance, like, it's going to provide what it expects to be the forecast, as well as kind of a range. And, in this case, it's giving you, if you want to say what within 90% confidence, basically the span of data. So only there's a 5% chance that it could be higher on the highest end outside of that range, or 5% of the very lowest below. What are the numbers? So it actually gives you 3 numbers: the actual forecast, the highest expected forecast and then the lowest expected forecast. And the percent of the time that it expects you to be, the data to fall in that range is 90% of the time. And kind of put it visually, that's what you see here in this chart. The green is actual, the orange is forecast, and then the top of the blue and the bottom of the blue show the ranges. Bottom. Does that help a little bit?
Yeah, that was really good. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
So I was not able to get the details of the intermediary. What was that? App builder? Is it an interpreter? Is it like a development tool internal to Google? What's actually it?
Yeah. So app sheets. Okay. So let's app script. Right. So
Yes.
you can go here to app script.
Eating is the ingestion of food, typically to
And
organisms.
it is, you can think of it as its own IDE. It really has everything you need for development. So, it's, again, JavaScript. It's, I believe, ES6 JavaScript. And it has, you can add libraries. So if you see an example of, like, if there's outside libraries you want to use and include, you can do that. Services, this is pretty cool. You can see an example of all the different things you could do, like, say, integrating in, connecting to Google Drive, or maybe analytics, calendar, etc. Yeah, I've already added BigQuery and Sheets. Under the hood, there's this file that's hidden by default called appscript.json. And that, keeps track of the services that are associated with your project. So it's kind of intended to be a all-in-one integration environment. There's also, if you go to project settings, things like associating it with your GCP project. That's where you do that here. Even debugging. So this is pretty cool. You can, you can go in and set breakpoints with your script and things like that. So very cool. Yeah, you see debugging. I can run something and see what a value of a variable is all here.
So it is a JavaScript specific internal Google tool to integrate many of their APIs and products.
It is not an internal tool. It is available for users. Right. So if you just search, anybody can do this. Apps script. You can find all kinds of information about it. Again, the sort of glue between all of these different services in the cloud.
Okay.
Yeah, anybody can take advantage.
But isn't there some sort of authentication going on in order to connect to these APIs and to BigQuery? Or you need to have accounts on all of those in order to connect to them?
Yes, that's a very good question. So let's go back to my demo. So under the hood here, let's go back to this sheet. So what I did was I did this prior to the demo. I actually had another setting here to configure my project, and I can enter. I won't enter that in here. My GCP project ID. And what I'm going to need to do the very first time is authorize the script to be able to talk to my GCP project. So what I'm doing here in the demo, if you kind of look behind the scenes at the code, and this is all in the sample. Let's go in here. Let's see to the, we're querying specific. Yeah, we pass in like dynamically a project ID and things like that. That all requires authentication when you use it. Yeah. So.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
And Ratik, to your question around confidence scores, I pasted a link on one article from toward data science, as well as another one that's very similar to Carl's, that was authored by Lack around time series forecasting directly in BigQuery, which is kind of where Carl started. So it doesn't take into account the connected sheets like Carl is showing here, but it does go into maybe another level of depth if you're interested in getting more into that.
Thanks, Carl.
Thank you.
And Kyle also added some more information in the chat just for folks that might be watching the video here. Maybe you could talk about the tiers where you can start to use connected sheets.
Thank you, Carl. Yeah, I skipped over commenting on that. So Svetlin, you asked the question, hey, this connected sheets feature looks pretty cool. Do I have it? And how do I get it if I don't? So there are license levels of workspace that would include access to Google Sheets as the product. And then that feature for connected sheets is included at the enterprise level. There are 3 flavors, I'll call them. It's probably the incorrect term, but Enterprise Essentials, Enterprise Standard, or Enterprise Plus. All 3 of those include the connected sheets feature. And then it also applies for EDU customers, so education. So the Education Plus level also enables connected sheets. So if you have any of those levels of workspace licensing, you could do these cool things that Carl is showing us. It would not be enabled for a license level of workspace that is not one of those. So like the business level or some of the other levels do not include that feature.
Thank you. All right, any other questions? Okay.
Hey Carl, actually I had a question, but it is not really related to AI-based analytics. But actually I'm really new to this ML thing. So can you suggest me a few books to study about ML?
Yeah, sure. One of the resources, I'll actually paste it in here, the Google Crash Course on Machine Learning is really good for, it's got little bits and pieces around the key knowledge areas. It's got some exercises and things like that. So I've pasted that into the chat. I really recommend that. And I've got several books here that I'll show you a couple of my favorite ones. Once you get a little bit more comfortable with things, well, so the second thing I would recommend is Kaggle. Kaggle is the machine learning platform where you have competitions, friendly competitions, learning competitions where you can, try different types of problems. Great way to learn. That's how I got started. Yeah, thank you for that. Kaggle.com. If you're looking for a book, this book right here, I highly recommend. It covers a variety of, this is hands-on machine learning with scikit-learn, Keras, and TensorFlow. Oh, look, Kyle's got it as well. It's great because it's got different frameworks. It really covers the bases from, data analytics, anyway, I love it. Vision, natural language, tabular data, it's got it all. So, yeah, Kyle, anything else you'd recommend?
No, that is a very good book there. And then there's also another one, and this one's by Lack, who is one of the authors that of the article that we pasted in there. But design patterns as you start getting a little bit deeper into it. But I like the hands-on one that Carl shared there. And then Ratik, are you local here in San Diego? It's fine if you're not, but if you are, there are some.
No, I'm from India right now.
Okay.
I'm attending a meeting from India.
Yep. Okay. Yeah. I was going to mention for local resources, there is a San Diego machine learning group that does do some fairly regular hands-on training on different topics, not all Google specific. and they have been, like GDG and others, doing online type events. And I'm sure they'll go back to doing in person. So might begin to miss out on a few of those as things go back to face to face. But taking advantage, there's quite a bit out there.
Thank you.
Good. Well, a couple of very informative demos, and it's always nice to start out from the kind of the basics and orient yourself within what is BigQuery and then Sheets, and then Carl took us on a nice smooth journey, tying them all together. Of course, we know when you see a cooking show type demo like that, there's a lot of detail that goes into making it that way, and Carl has provided a link to the write-up on how to go through that. So hopefully that's beneficial there. Carl, any recommendations on folks that are going through that on other forums that they might consider if they ran into some challenges or they wanted to stretch a little bit beyond following the pattern that's here?
Yeah, there isn't a comment link or anything on the article, but you can feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn or Twitter if you've got any questions.
Perfect.
Yeah.
All right. Ritik, any other questions or comments that we can bring here, or any other attendees?
No, actually, I don't have any. It was a really wonderful learning experience over here. So thank you for having me.
I'm glad. With that,
Thank
then
you.
I think we'll hand it over to Svetlin, who is going to do the giveaway at the end of the session. Svetlin, would you like to keep the recording going, or shall we tie it off here? And you're on mute.
You can turn it off.
Okay, well, that ends things for the recording today of San Diego's Google Developer Group. Our session today presented by Carl, AI in Connected Sheets. Thank you very much, and you can find the next event online. We will be having an event that's next Tuesday, the 22nd, so please join us for that. Thanks.